welcome to Moody's Mixer. Going to court, I talked about prognosis versus diagnosis, what's the difference? And another thing that has really impacted my life and something that I always kind of paid attention to was the law. Things I've always been amazed with is whether to go to trial or to settle in court. One of the things I've had the pleasure of being through my professional career is an expert witness. And one of the things about being an expert witness is your testimony a lot of the time has a heavy weight on how the jury will come up with a verdict of innocent or guilty or, yes or no. That was always important to me was to never commit a crime because I never wanted to go to jail. Jail was something I just never wanted to do because I knew my freedom is taken away from me. And one of the things in the court system, you have criminal trials and you have civil trials. And they completely two different types of trials. One brings on a sentence to jail, criminal, or civil typically brings on cash or punitive damages. Things that you can't go to jail for. And one of the things as a CPA, we used to always have to tell our clients, especially dealing with the IRS, you don't have to be afraid of them. People will always say, I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to owe no money. I want to go to jail. Well, you don't go to jail for owing the IRS money. You go to jail for the IRS for evading taxes, creating fraud, doing something illegal. Not because you owe. You can't go to jail because you owe money. Now, they can seize your accounts and things of that nature, put levies and seize your assets, but you can't go to jail. So I always say, well, worst case, I can just lose everything. I can lose all my assets. Everything that I own could just be gone. But at least I'm not in jail. So I always tried to make sure nothing I did in life would be considered a crime. Now, I ain't saying I never did nothing that could have got me in jail, and it's just being a knucklehead. I realized in court, and especially as I started serving as an expert witness, my testimony or how well I can present the case or find facts and evidence gives this person the best or worst opportunity to win or lose their case. And if you haven't been to court before, it's a lot of pressure. And if you have to go to court, in any capacity, it's nerve-wracking because court, in my mind, just always seems like somebody going to jail. Even if it was a civil case, the nerves are still bad, but you got to deal with it. But what I realized, being an expert witness, the pressure of being in court was one thing, but knowing your testimony would provide this person relief or something adds a whole nother level of pressure. Affects us, affects us all differently. As an athlete, we feel different pressure at different parts of the game, different games. As you move up, going through tournaments and stuff, pressure gets greater. So I looked at when I got my diagnosis with cancer, I said, okay, am I going to go to trial or am I going to settle this case? And I had to make a decision to settle or go to trial. Also, what's asked of you a lot of times in court, are you going to testify on your own behalf? And a lot of times your attorney may tell you, we don't want to get you on the stand because they get to cross-examine you and that could lose the case. And depending on how well they can prepare you or how well they think you will perform under pressure, they may or may not want you on the stand. And you could tell the best story to win your case, but can you tell that story under pressure? What's going to happen when the lights come on? Can I handle the cross-examination? And so when you get a diagnosis, it's like cross-examination. Now I'm on the stand. Can I handle the pressure of being cross-examined? And the irony of it, the cross-examination comes from people on your team, not the opposition. And that adds even more pressure. This is a mind game like no other. So now you go to court, the pressure is thick. Even if you don't testify, what you got to do is make sure your team now is doing everything they can to give you the best result. You really don't have a whole bunch of power. Now, what you hope is you told them everything. You didn't leave anything out. See, if you have a team, to withhold information hurts you. Now, if they really not on your team and you feeling that way, you need to either get a new team or you need to decide, man, I need to pony up and just let them know I gotta trust them. At some point, you gotta trust your team and people on your team, and you have to give out all the information. And in return, you hope they give you all the information that allows you to make the best decision. Most of us at some point in time see the inside of courtroom is you can feel the presence of power, and it can shrink you to a smaller image of who you are and what you can portray for yourself, and whether you're a defendant or a plaintiff in a case. And so when I got my cancer diagnosis, I had to decide whether or not I would settle or I would take the trial. The anxiety level is the same, and also depending on whether or not it's a criminal case or a civil case, because the penalties are different for criminal cases and civil cases. See, so for civil cases, there's no jail time. They're cash awards, punitive damages, as opposed to having to serve time in a prison. The pressure is different because the result is different. And one of the things I learned early on in my career, that truth or what is correct or what is right, what really happened, doesn't always win in the court case. Who can present the best case typically wins the judgment or wins the trial. That's why a lot of people choose to settle as opposed to going to trial, because typically going to trial creates a greater risk. And you may not want to put that much pressure on yourself or on the team. Even though you're not presenting the case, I've had the pleasure to be able to serve as an expert witness, several times, hoping for, if we can get them to settle right here. Not because we were afraid maybe of losing the case for going to court, that dollar value may not have been enough to risk what a settlement could be. So that's a factor. When I got my cancer diagnosis, I had to kind of make a decision like that. And that's why I kind of talked about the diagnosis versus prognosis. I knew what the diagnosis was, but what's the prognosis? Okay, if I go to trial, this is the potential outcome. If I settle, this is the potential outcome. And what is that delta? What is that gap? Is it worth the risk? And if I'm the one who is on trial or the one who is defending, I have to make that decision. And I just hope my counsel is giving me the best information to make the best decision. It's nerve-wracking. Or you make the decision, hey, do we want to settle this case or do we want to go to trial? I'm taking my cancer to trial. See, to me, doing having an invasive procedure, I was settling. I was like, okay, this is what they offer me. Hey man, so one attorney or one doctor tell me this is a good deal. Should take the deal. Another one say, I think you can do a little bit better. Another one can say, may say, hey man, let's go to trial. And I told them the exact same story. It's the same diagnosis. See, one of the things about diagnosis, when people get a bad diagnosis, what they always ask for, go get a second opinion. Are they going for a second opinion to tell them that the diagnosis is false or the diagnosis is true? So the diagnosis from the second opinion comes back the same. Go get a third opinion. What you're looking for, what I found out, what we look for is someone to say, no, you don't have it. And now we can continue on with our life. Question is, how well do we identify, do we look into whatever the diagnosis was, whatever the evidence that's been presented, How well do we look at it to say, okay, wait a minute. What if I have it and the guy said I don't have it was wrong and I don't do anything? Because see, as they say in the law, you can find an attorney to take anybody's case to do anything. Where a million attorneys would say, nope, you can always find one that'll say yeah. So you can always find a doctor to tell you maybe no or yes, whatever you're looking for. That's why the prognosis becomes so important. Because now that second or third opinion, it's not about the guilt or innocence or whether or not I have cancer or don't have cancer. It is, what are my options? So before I decide whether or not I'm going to court or I am going to settle, what are my options? How can I make the best decision? Because I got this team. I got these great attorneys. We got good witnesses. Everything that looks like we're fine. We should be able to win this case. But are there some things that have been left out that the other side can dig in and say, I see an opening? So as an expert witness, one of the things I had to learn real quick, like case number one, is there's somebody on the other side who's going to try to prove what you're saying is not false. And before they try to prove to the jury, the judge, or whomever, this is how I offset what they're saying to the jury, here's my rebuttal to what they're presenting. And so sometimes when you're looking at numbers, it's how the numbers were calculated or presented. What is the methodology that they came up with a particular statistic or a range of why this is more as probable as opposed to possible. And so those are the things we always have to look at and understand when you're an expert witness or when you are the client or the patient. Do I have all the evidence that if I go to trial, I can have a good outcome? Or should I just say? I want to thank you for tuning in to Moody's Mixer. And I hope you're enjoying this series that I'm presenting about cancer and that how to look at cancer may be a little different. And I hope you get a chance to subscribe to the channel, like it, or comment. It helps the channel to grow by your participation. So thanks for tuning in to Moody's Mixer. I hope to see you next week. God bless.